Imagine someone presses their finger into your arm. I mean, it's annoying, sure, but it doesn't really hurt. Now imagine they take a sharp sewing needle and push it into your arm using the exact same amount of force. Ouch, right? That is definitely breaking the skin.
So what's going on here? Why does a dull finger just mildly annoy you, but a needle, pushed with the literal exact same force, cause actual pain and pierce your skin? Well, the force hasn't changed at all, but the microscopic area of that needle point, that creates a massive difference. And that difference is the core of what we are unpacking today: pressure. By the end of this explainer, you're going to completely master the physics of pressure. We're going to break down the core concept, look at the incredibly simple formula behind it, and figure out how to apply it to real-life situations. Actually, we'll even calculate the immense, mind-boggling forces acting on an astronaut's air tank in the dead vacuum of space. All right, let's dive right into this. Moving from our needle example to a strict physics definition, pressure is formally defined as the force divided by the area perpendicular to that force. Basically, think of it as how concentrated a push is. If you take a push and spread it out over a really wide area, the pressure is super low. But if you concentrate that exact same push into a tiny little dot, like the tip of our needle, the pressure becomes incredibly, incredibly high. And here is the beautifully simple formula that drives all of this. P equals F divided by A. In this equation, P is our pressure, F is the force being applied, and A is the area. Notice the mathematical relationship going on here. Because area is on the bottom in the denominator, as that area shrinks, the pressure gets exponentially larger. Again, just like the sharp point of a needle. So, how exactly do we measure this? Well, the standard metric unit, the SI unit for pressure, is called the Pascal, which is abbreviated as PA. 1 Pascal is exactly equal to 1 Newton of force spread evenly over 1 square meter. Now, to be honest, 1 Pascal is a tiny, tiny amount of pressure. So in real life, you'll see a lot of other units too. Meteorologists, they use millibars for weather patterns. You've probably checked your car tires using PSI or pounds per square inch. And if you've ever had a nurse take your blood pressure, they were measuring it in millimeters of mercury. But for us, in physics, the Pascal is our absolute gold standard. Let's look at an example that makes this formula instantly intuitive. Imagine a 55-kilogram person walking in a pair of flat shoes. Their weight, which is the downward force, is spread over a relatively large area, so the pressure on the floor is pretty low. But if they switch into stiletto high heels, there's a moment when their entire weight rests on one tiny 1.5 square centimeter heel. The pressure on the floor suddenly spikes to nearly 3.6 million pascals. Seriously, take a second to wrap your head around that. In fact, in the early days of commercial flight, women were actually banned from wearing high-heeled shoes on planes because the aircraft floors were too thin to withstand that kind of enormous concentrated pressure. Just wild, right? Now, right about now, you might be asking a question I hear from students all the time. You're probably thinking, wait a minute, if pressure is based on force, and force is a vector that has a very specific direction, doesn't pressure have a direction too? It's a really fantastic question. Well, the answer is actually no. Pressure itself is what we call a scalar quantity, meaning it has no direction of its own. However, and this is a big however, the actual forces created by pressure absolutely do have well-defined directions. This is especially crucial when we're talking about static fluids, like stationary liquids or gases. A static fluid just can't withstand or exert sideways shearing forces. Instead, fluid pressure always exerts forces perfectly perpendicular to any surface it touches. Let's ground this in the real world. Think about the air pressure trapped inside a car tire. Those air molecules are constantly pushing outwards, perfectly perpendicular to the inside walls of the rubber at every single microscopic point. Now let's flip that scenario around. Imagine a scuba diver completely underwater. In this case, the water exerts pressure inward on the swimmer from all sides. If the swimmer suddenly vanished, water would just rush straight in to fill the void. The arrows of force are perpendicular to the diver's body everywhere. Oh, and notice something really cool here. Those arrows of force are actually a bit larger underneath the swimmer. That's because fluid pressure naturally increases the deeper you go, which is what creates a net upward buoyant force. So how does this build into a practical calculation? Let's look at this scenario. We've got an astronaut working outside the International Space Station, right in the vacuum of space where atmospheric pressure is essentially zero. She has a highly pressurized air tank on her back, which is just a cylinder with flat ends. Our question is, what is the exact force that the air inside her tank exerts on just the flat end of that cylinder? To solve this, we do what we always do in physics. We pull out our known variables from the problem. The gauge pressure on her tank reads 6.90 times 10 to the 6th pascals. That's our P. The flat end of the tank is a circular disc with a diameter of 0.150 meters. So that's our D. And what we need to find is the total force, F. Walk through the math with me step by step. Step 1, we take our foundational pressure definition, P equals F over A, and we just rearrange it to isolate force. So now force equals pressure multiplied by area, or F equals PA. Step 2, we need to figure out that area. Since the end of the tank is a flat circle, the area is simply pi times the radius squared. Since our diameter is 150 meters, we cut that in half to get a radius of 0.0750 meters. We square that radius, multiply it by pi, and boom, we have our physical area. Step 3, we simply take our given pressure and multiply it by the area we just found. Now, what is truly astonishing here is the final result. When we multiply that pressure by the area, we get 1.22 times 10 to the 5th newtons. Guys, that is 122,000 newtons of force pressing relentlessly outward against just the flat little end of that relatively small air tank. It's no wonder these tanks have to be engineered out of exceptionally strong materials. Because force equals pressure times area, it becomes super clear that the total force exerted by a fluid is directly proportional to both the pressure itself and the size of the area it's pushing against. Okay, let's wrap this up with a quick summary of the core concepts we unpacked in today's lecture. The absolutely crucial takeaway is that pressure is force per unit area. Our go-to formula is P equals F divided by A. The standard metric unit is the Pascal, which is simply 1 Newton per square meter. And finally, always remember that while pressure itself is just a scalar number, the actual forces exerted by static fluid pressure are always directed perfectly perpendicular to the surface they act on. I want to leave you today with a bit of a conceptual challenge, just to test your brand new physics intuition. Picture a remote lake up near the North Pole. Floating out in this lake is an iceberg. Right next to the lake, sitting on solid dry land, is a glacier of the exact same size. If rising temperatures cause both of these massive ice chunks to melt completely, with all their water flowing into the lake, which one, the floating iceberg or the land-based glacier, will cause the lake level to rise more? Think really carefully about the physics at play here, and I'll see you in our next explainer as we continue exploring the fascinating properties